Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today we are just going to have a real casual conversation about Arydia. And I've played enough, I think, to form some opinions of the game. And overall, I think Arydia is pretty damn awesome. This game is super cool. There's one word that kept coming to mind as I was playing it, as I was experiencing the game on the table, setting it up, just engaging with the game on a pretty detailed level, and that word is thoughtful. This is a very thoughtful design. Cody Miller made a very thoughtful game. And yeah, I don't see that a lot. That isn't a word that comes to mind a lot when I'm playing these kinds of grand, epic games. So I've only played the game for about 6 hours. But in that 6 hours, I've discovered a lot to like. I've discovered a few little things I don't like, and those are very nitpicky. And both of those things really do have to do with components. So we'll talk about those in just a minute. But almost everything else I have completely fallen in love with. And I think the thing I like most is that this truly is a sandbox game. Now, I'm not going to show a lot of this game in this video. And that's because one of the biggest joys of Arydia is in that sense of discovery, of moving to a new place, drawing the card, revealing the hex map, revealing the tiles, and discovering the game while you are playing. That is a huge, huge thing about this game. And so I don't want to show really anything. And I showed some of the stuff in my setup video of the quick start and just kind of looking at some of that initial tutorial stuff. There are quite a few Let's Plays on YouTube going through this quick start guide. So if you want to see some of that, check out One Stop Co-op Shop. They've done some. I think Rolling Solo has done some. So if you want to see the game in action, this is not the video for you. This is just kind of a brief discussion. But yeah, that sandbox nature, moving around, not really having a driving narrative, I like that. This is my kind of adventure game. All you are trying to do as the players in this game, the players are all of the heroes are outcasts, you're pariahs. And you are trying to do jobs, trying to do side quests, trying to work your way back into society. And how you do that is up to you. You can set out from your starting village, from this little guild of outcasts, and you can go in any direction you want to go. You might discover enemies that are way too strong for you and have to retreat, but hey, that's part of the game. I think that is so cool. I love that aspect in this board game. And because of that, I think Arydia does get really close to that kind of mythical thing that some people call an RPG in a box. And it does feel like that. It feels like a co-op, GM-less RPG that has that kind of guidance that people who like a more contained board game experience are looking for. So it truly is, I think, a hybrid game, and I do enjoy that quite a bit. Now, in my setup video, or my video where I talked about getting everything prepared to play, I talked about this big kind of Plano box that I use to store all of the chits. And as I assumed, yes, this is completely overkill because almost all of this stuff you can ignore once you set up your character, and you can ignore until you level up. Then you could pull out your little chits and then add the new things to your character. So because this is so overkill, I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to bag up the components and just kind of toss them in some of the few of the little empty spaces in the box. But this is definitely not needed. So if you're worried about having to keep track of things in this game, the bookkeeping, the component management, I think is kept pretty low, especially for a game of this scope, of this epicness. The documentation, I think, is very good. So when we played as a group, I played with 3. We did play through the quick start guide up to a point. We actually stopped following the quick start guide towards the end because we were so anxious to just get out and start exploring. So we actually missed some of this stuff. We might have missed some maybe some clues or something that the game directs you towards. But yeah, we all thought, hey, you know what? Let's stop with the guide and just kind of start exploring. And we ended up having fun. We came across a side quest that was pretty difficult, and we had to retreat and kind of regroup and rethink and head back to camp and rest, and then come back to that side quest to try to attempt it again. And we did much better the second time. I'm not going to tell you what that is or where that is because, again, the sense of discovery is really what does make this game so unique and so adventurous. But just looking through this guide, seeing some of the things that we skipped over in the tutorial, I do see things that we could go back and explore that we missed. So that leads me to believe that there is actually quite a bit in this game that you won't see in one playthrough, and that is another really cool thing. So these combat tutorials, these are invaluable. We played through the combat tutorials as a group. I played through my Path of Valor. This was my character. My other player in our group played as the Path of Arcana. I thought they would pick the Ranger, but they wanted the magic user. And then I was right, my other buddy, he wanted to play the Path of Shadow. So these are the characters in our party. What's really cool is you can drop in, drop out, and without any penalties. All of the characters in your party level up together. And it's really easy to keep track of the levels that you have gained. So if you want to introduce a new player to your party, they can just level up to your other party members' levels. Or if if my buddy who's playing the Path of Arcana, if he wants to switch to a Ranger, he can do that at any time. Very, very easy to drop in and drop out. The game scales very easily with however many players are in your party. So again, very, very thoughtful. I think just about everything about this game feels thoughtful. It feels like they looked at the game they were designing for the audience they were designing for and made the right decision in how they approached each of the mechanisms, each of the components, except for a few. We'll get to that in a bit. But we played through each of our combat examples as a group, going turn by turn, kind of round robin style. And I'm so glad we did that because what that showed me is that each of the characters is very, very different in how they play and how they approach combat. And so you really do want to think about the character you are playing. You know, the Path of Valor, my character is sword and board. I'm going up, I'm getting in people's faces, I'm blocking, I'm taking damage, and I'm striking back. Very simple, and that is totally my style. The Path of Arcana, the magic user, man, talk about a glass cannon. I think they start with like 1 HP, but they could do a heck of a lot of damage with one of their starting spells. One of their lightning spells is just amazing, but they can get knocked out very, very quickly. So you want to think, you want to be very careful with your tactics and your strategy when you're playing with one of these glass cannon characters. And then the thief is very, very different. They are going into hiding and then sneaking around the battlefield and laying these traps and then trying to draw enemies into the traps and do backstabs and stuff. Very cool. We were all surprised by just how different the characters played. And that's just at the beginning of the game. Not even taking into account all of the new loot and the new gear and the new skills that you will unlock. So I am very interested. I think the game will play quite a bit differently with different party composition of the different outcasts, of the different exiles, the heroes here, just because of how different they play. And then the rulebook too is also very good. So I did read through the rulebook a couple times before we played. The combat example in the back of the rulebook here, I think, is very valuable. And the combat in Arydia, I think, is one of the high points. I think it's safe to say that the combat in Arydia is one of the most interesting combat systems I've ever seen in a board game, and we all really like it a lot. Now, longtime viewers of the Dungeon Dive will know that typically in these kinds of games, I'm not super into the combat because I feel like the combat can kind of drag on for too long while simultaneously not being very interesting. But here, it does drag on for a little bit. However, it's always interesting. It's super, super cool. It does remind me a little bit of the combat in Sleeping Gods in that there is a little bit of a spatial puzzle that you kind of have to work through. But I think the puzzle here is more interesting and it feels more like combat because each of the enemies will have 2 cards, or maybe there's more, but the enemies that we've faced off against so far have only had 2 cards. They have an AI card and also a grid card that shows where their hit points are and also gives you some other information. Now, what's really cool is on the back of a lot of the cards in this game, you actually have a built-in FAQ that answers some of the most important questions about the rules associated with that card. Again, thoughtfulness. This is so thoughtful. Myth could have used this level of thoughtfulness. If Myth was designed with this amount of thoughtfulness, I might be sitting here right now talking about Myth in the same kind of way that I'm talking about Arydia right now, with nothing really but high praise. In a weird way, Arydia does remind me of Myth. It's kind of maybe Myth done right or something like that. Myth is quite a bit different, but eventually we'll get to Myth on the channel. But your AI card here, this will tell you how the enemies will attack depending on how much threat has been generated. Again, kind of like Myth here. And then how they attack, and then what happens when a critical spot gets hit, and a little bit of other information. But the most interesting thing I think here is this grid hit point system, because each one of these nodes, and so this practice dummy, this is the first enemy you'll fight. This is from the tutorial. So these practice dummies have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hit points. So each one of those little circle nodes is a hit point. The the hit point nodes with the little target symbol, those are critical hits. When those get hit, something happens. So when you hit a practice dummy in one of those nodes, then they get more threat. So they generate more threat, so they will do more powerful attacks back towards you. These nodes here with a blue, those are armored nodes. So those take basically 2 attacks to defeat, because one attack will hit the armor off, and then the next attack will do damage. However, some of the gears, some of the heroes will have the ability to have armor-piercing attacks that will bypass that armor. Super cool. But what's most interesting is the hit points are all hit in a directional basis, in a directional method. So different weapons will tell you that they attack in different directions. Let's take a look at my Path of Valor here. Again, very thoughtful. The way you save your character is so cool. My character is saved here. I just pull out these sheets here and everything is slotted. I don't need to reorganize in between games. So right now I have a helmet, I have 2 cuffs and a practice gambeson and a shield. And then this is my shield token, and I can physically place that shield token where I want to block. Very, very cool. But my sword here, my sword attacks in this direction. And so when I take a look at this enemy card, all of my attacks are swiping attacks from the left to the right, and they come in this direction. And I can hit different nodes depending on the direction. Now, if I hit nodes and I go through and I hit one of these critical nodes, then that critical node damages the corresponding node that the orange arrow is pointing to. Some attacks will go up, some attacks will go down, some will go from the right to the left or the left to the right. So there's this kind of positional puzzle associated with the combat that makes the weapons feel different and makes your striking feel different. You know, like in video games when you have a horizontal or vertical strike, It feels different, especially in games that have that kind of positional damage. That is that's represented here in cardboard. And man, we had so much fun figuring out, okay, you are better at, so we had this one group of rats that we were attacking, and the rats had different configurations of nodes with different configurations of critical nodes. And some were more critical to slashing, some were more or to horizontal attacks, some were weaker against vertical attacks. Just super, super cool. And what's also cool is that there is, each of the enemies will have a different die that they roll that determines where they hit you on your paper doll. And the rats, being small, they rolled the yellow D6, which means that they could only attack the lower part of my body. Again, super, super thoughtful. It made sense. When I looked at the rats, I thought, I bet they use the yellow D6 for attacking because they want to bite you. They're biting at your feet. And that is exactly what happened. There were multiple times in this game where the logical thing that I thought would happen is the thing that happened because of how thoughtful the design is. The leveling up is thoughtful. How you unlock skills and how the skill trees work, and how you can learn a skill, but you don't get to master that skill until you do something that involves that skill in the game, and then you get to flip that over. And once you master it, then you have this little token on your skill board. You can flip that token over to its mastered side. And that way, if you want to swap out your skills and you slot one of your skills back into this board, you can very quickly remember which skills you have mastered and which skills you haven't, even though you maybe have unlocked them. You've learned them, but you haven't mastered them yet. Again, very, very thoughtful. There are so many things that I like about this game. And once we packed it up, I just wanted to keep playing. It was one of those games where as soon as I packed it up, I was like, oh man, is there any way, can I play this solo without ruining my campaign? And I don't think you can, unfortunately. I don't think you can have more than one game going on at the same time. And that is unfortunate. But even the tuck boxes here for the characters, they have their deck of cards. And as they gain more gear, you can look at your cards to learn how to use that gear. So how to use your sword, how to use your shield and your spear. And each one of these has an FAQ on the back to answer common questions. Each one of your skills has an information card with an FAQ. So it's all very, very easy to learn, to play, to keep going. And yeah, it's a fantastic game. I'm having so much fun with it, and I can't wait. We're playing again this next Saturday, and I really can't wait. Now, there are a couple things that I do not like, and it's mainly having to do with some of the components. And the tiles, I am not happy with these tiles at all. They're very, very flimsy. And I think it might have to do with the climate that we're experiencing right now in the Pacific Northwest. It's very cold and dry, and I have my baseboard heaters on, which also dries out the air very quickly. And my tiles are so warped. I mean, just look at how, yeah, they're warped. They have that kind of permanent warp to them. The corners are all curled up, and I'm having a really hard time laying these out flat. There was a time when we had 4 or 5 tiles of different size laid out on the board, and every corner was warped, and it looked pretty bad. I know that's really nitpicky, but I was afraid that would happen. Because they're also so flimsy, the corners are already getting really dinged up just from pulling them out and putting them back in when I'm done with them. Something happened when I put this box back in, that the divider card got squished by something that was already in the box. So that's my fault, but just know that these are pretty flimsy, so you're going to want to be really careful. Another thing, because these are tuck boxes, they do have a lip, and they're very tight, and you will damage cards in the back because they will hang up on that lip. So what a lot of people are doing is taking the tuck box out and putting the lip on the outside, and I just applied some tape here. So now my lip is on the outside, so the cards that I put in the back won't get banged up. But even so, the tiles are already getting really dinged up, and I've only been playing for 6 hours. And just the fact that they're so warped and they just won't stay in place even when I bend them back. And the small tiles are even more warped. But yeah, that really bums me out. I was afraid of that because they are so thin. They are just cardstock. They are just normal. I mean, I've seen playing cards that are better quality than these. I think I would have preferred half as many locations with tiles that were twice as thick, just for longevity. I have a feeling that by the end of a campaign, a lot of the components in this game are going to look pretty beat up. So if you are buying a used copy, I think your copy is going to be well loved. And that's not bad, but just know that going in. And especially these treasure chests here for the different gear. These things are already, the edges are already getting scuffed up, and these are really, really flimsy, and they don't really stay closed anymore. Once you open them, they kind of just always pop open. This was really overkill, I think. I don't think we really needed anything like this. I'm not sure what this really adds to the experience. It's kind of neat. My players, we liked looking at these, but I think I'm going to try to find a different solution for these. And I have a feeling that, again, in a year or so, buying used copies of this, you might find that these treasure chests are pretty scuffed up from just being used and not being abused, but just being opened and closed and having things stored in them. But all of the other components are great. The cards are great. The card organization is great. The system is really cool. I like that there's not a campaign book because the cards are brief. The text in the game, I think, is well written. So far, I've enjoyed interacting with the NPCs that I've interacted with. Things have happened. Really cool things have happened. I have said, wow, that is awesome, like multiple times in the first 6 hours of play. Surprising things. Something happened at the end of this side quest that we were on at the end of our last session, and all three of us were very shocked at what happened and very curious about where that's going to lead, the kind of the ramifications of our choices. There were things that we explored in this little side quest, one little side quest. We explored, we found something that gave us a clue. That clue came into play later, helped us make a decision, which ended up paying off and ended up planting a seed that is going to happen later because of the way the cards are seated and the cards are organized. That is awesome. That's the kind of thing I like to see in a grand adventure game like this, where it feels like my choices matter and it feels like I am living in this world. And I think the world of Arydia, the world that Cody Miller has created, is super interesting. And I must say the art too by Mr. Cuddington and the graphic design by Philip Ock. It's a super, super well-made and thoughtful game with good writing, good mechanisms, interesting combat, interesting exploration that has meaningful ramifications depending on how you've explored. There's just a few little things I don't like, and most of those have to do with the tiles. The tiles I wish were a little better quality. But yeah, so I am greatly looking forward to playing more of Arydia. These were my preliminary thoughts after 6 hours. I really don't see things getting worse. I can only really see things getting better. As long as that ratio between the carrot and the stick, right? These games are all about that carrot on the stick, about leading us and giving us little rewards frequently. If there ends up being a time when we're playing, there's not enough carrot and too much stick, I could see us, kind of maybe souring on the game. But by then, maybe I've already have played 20 or 30 hours and I've gotten my enjoyment out of it. So, but yeah, as of right now, I can highly recommend Arydia. Hopefully, I'm sure this game will come back into print. Hopefully, there's at least some kind of retail or web version available for people to buy, maybe on the Far Off Games web store. But they have made something pretty damn special with Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread. So, all right, you guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed these thoughts on Arydia. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.